Ah, you're back. Hello. Yes, I am going to try to come up with as many contrived, false, spontaneous introductions as I can for this series because it's fun. Anyway, this is another selection of What Are We Reading, where I let you in on what I'm currently reading and where I am and what I'm thinking and what's up. And maybe you're reading the same thing I'm reading. Maybe. Who knows? But I think this is kind of fun. It also keeps me reading stuff because I know I want to make these videos, so I really should keep reading the books that I'm reading. Anyway, before I tell you the book that I'm reading, give you a little bit of background on me. I was a theater kid when I was in high school and college, and then after college, I was involved in theater. I loved acting. I really enjoyed that. I did backstage stuff. I liked watching plays, things along those lines. I was in the theater department of my college. I got a certificate. We don't have minors at my college for theater when I went, but anyway, it was a minor basically in theater. And yeah, I just really like theater and drama. When I came to the high school where I teach now, I think one of the reasons why I got the job was because I'd done theater, and one of the interviewers had started a sort of third year elective drama class, which is actually an English class. But anyway, so I taught that for a while. But anyway, point is, I've always been a theater guy, an acting guy. I've always loved it. And one of my great sins as a theater guy, a theater kid, not a kid anymore, you get my point, but one of my great sins is that I spent most of my life having had zero interaction with Les Misérables. When I was in college, I knew people who'd been to see it. I knew people who had the original cast recordings. I knew people who could sing. They'd be able to jump into, the songs. I mean, even just by osmosis. Okay, I know what, I dreamed a dream of something. Fine, okay, I get that. But they knew all the lyrics and they loved it and they adored it. And for them, Les Miserables was just the pinnacle of musical theater. Maybe it's because of the contrarian in me. I do have a wee bit of a contrarian streak that once something becomes incredibly popular, I just get all huffy and go, I don't want to do it. But somehow, yeah, between being someone who loves to read and being somebody who grew up with theater, I somehow managed to completely have no contact with Les Miserables at all until this year, when I'm on a reading group on Signal. That's the name of the app. And one of the other guys on there is like, "Hey, let's read Les Miserables." And I thought, well, that's great. Why not now? Let's jump into Les Miserables. So that's what we are doing. This is the translation by Doniger. Doniger? Yeah, I think Doniger is how you pronounce it. The Doniger translation of Les Miserables of Victor Hugo. With a lot of notes. Tons of notes. I'm going to recommend getting this translation because number one, it's very good. It's very, very readable. I like it a lot. But number two, it offers up a ton of historical notes. All of these people that Hugo mentions, references that are maybe to people of the time when he was writing it would have been obvious, but to us is not because we are not living in 19th century France. So there's lots and lots of notes. It's well translated. It's very readable. I like it. But just to let you know where I am, I'm maybe 4 chapters into part 1, Fantine. And I really like this. This is really good. And I kind of wish I had read this book earlier. Part of it is because I think Hugo is really hitting something in me, which I recognize, which is a certain feeling that there is there is something about society, about the systems of our society, which seems to be, probably isn't intentionally, but seems to be built to keep certain people down, to keep the poor, to keep women, to keep the workers down and oppressed and just shut up. And I think Hugo, just in these first 4 chapters, is really, really hitting that really hard. He's looking at people who've had to make terrible sacrifices because of their poverty, like Fantine. We're talking about people who, like in the very beginning, the first person that he talks about is this Monseigneur Bienvenu, who is a bishop, and yet he devotes his everything, all of his energy, all of his time, all of his money to helping people in need, to helping the poor. And he is brilliant. He is beautiful. He's such a nice guy. He's got his sister and his maid there. And they're like, well, why don't we do something for us? He's like, no, we can't do that. We're doing this for the people. And yeah, it is pretty clear that Hugo, and it helps, I read the bit at the beginning where it talks about Victor Hugo and what he thought was important. But yeah, it's pretty clear that Hugo is concerned about how the poor are treated, how the workers are treated, and how people who are living in indignity and living in difficulty, how they get on with their lives. So I really like that. So it's definitely hitting a button that I like, that I enjoy reading about. Number two, of course, is the characters that are presented here. Oh, how did I go so long without reading this book? Good Lord. So yeah, Monsignor Bienvenu is wonderful because even though he's a bishop, and we're not supposed to like bishops, nobody's supposed to like bishops, but he is a good person. He at one point exchanges his official mansion for a hospital. He realizes that his mansion has a lot more space and the hospital needs more space. So he's like, why don't you move in there? I'll move my stuff in here. At one point, he's always going out to visit people who live really far away. He's going to visit people who are politically problematic. And he's just an all-around good guy. And if you want like a nice model of moral behavior, you probably couldn't go too wrong with Monsieur Bienvenu, or Monsignor Bienvenu. And, Hugo doesn't really cast any judgment on this. He doesn't say, well, the Monsignor, the bishop, probably should have spent more time on this, that, or the other thing. Hugo makes it very, very clear that he really likes this character that he's created and that he thinks that Monsignor Bienvenu is doing just the right thing and behaving in just the right way. He gets to Jean Valjean, who is a criminal, and one of the qualities, again, I have only understood Les Misérables through just the barest osmosis, and my image of Jean Valjean was always a misunderstood man who had stolen a loaf of bread for his family, and he was a good man, and he was unfairly being chased throughout the whole thing. And Hugo makes it very, very clear that Jean Valjean, sure, he probably received a punishment well in excess of the crime that he committed, but he is not a good man. And his life in prison turned him into not a good man. However, with the help of Monsignor Bienvenu, Jean Valjean reforms, and he sort of, in a very, very hard way, becomes a much better person, where you have this very, very bad man who is confronted by a very, very good man, and where he is faced with a moment of moral choice. Do I do this terrible thing, or do I remain indebted to this very good man? It's really, really neat. And I like Jean Valjean. He's good. He's a good character. He's not a good man, but he tries to be, eventually. He tries to become a good man once he is given the model of behavior that Monsignor Bienvenu provides for him. Then, of course, we have Fantine, who is a beautiful woman who unfortunately finds herself in difficult straits, getting pregnant from this rascal, this jerk, and she has to work to take care of her beautiful little daughter. But of course, she cannot take care of the daughter and work at the same time, so she leaves her daughter off with these people who basically scam her for as much money as she can. She ends up utterly destitute, losing track of her daughter and becoming a prostitute, and her life is in ruins. And then by the time where I am now is about where we've met Javert, who is the policeman, who is, I think, as Hugo put him, like, if you could turn a wolf into a human, that would be Javert. This relentless believer in right and wrong, and well, not right and wrong, in rules. That there are rules, and those rules must be followed, and the people who follow the rules are right, the people who don't follow the rules are wrong. So yeah, I think there's some really, really brilliant characters I like a lot, and Hugo is hitting these points of fairness and good and what's right and wrong, and putting together, so far, characters which should not go together. Again, the violent and dangerous Jean Valjean versus the good and kind Monsignor Bienvenu. And we're seeing kind of how these different moral codes interact. And when Javert is introduced into the picture, and the section where I just left off is where I think he meets Jean Valjean again, where Valjean has kind of reformed himself, and he does this incredible feat of strength, and Javert is like, there's only one man strong enough to do what that man just did. And so I think what Hugo's setting up at this point, where I am at the moment, is this clash, I guess, between Jean Valjean and Javert. But yeah, all I can say is, how did I miss this? Because I'm a contrarian at heart. That's how. Because I was a jerk. Because in my head, I was like, well, if it's that popular, it can't be that good. But I actually had the same reaction to The Count of Monte Cristo. When I read The Count of Monte Cristo, this is years and years ago, it's been a long time, But my first reaction to reading The Count of Monte Cristo was, how have I not read this before? Why did I not read this in high school? My high school English teacher did me a great disservice. Would I teach this in my high school English class? Absolutely not, because we have a limited amount of time, and we have to cover a certain number of books. This book is huge, and my students are wonderful. Don't get me wrong. I'm not sure they would get as much out of this as I would, which usually tends to be the case. I tend to come into class, I'm like, this book is brilliant, I love it, and here's all the things that I love about it, and I kind of get a blank stare. But oh well. Anyway, thank you for joining me. I will check in with you again on this book because it's a very long book, and I'm sure I'm going to be reading it for a while, but right now, that's what I'm reading. If you're a fan of Les Misérables, the book, the musical, sure, but the book, chime in. Let me know what you think. So I will see you again later.